Understanding the Nature of Unconditional Love, with your host, Nigel Wheeler.
Every one of us wants to live life well. We'd like to think we've left this world a better place because of our having lived in it. Teachers, in particular, have the opportunity to leave an invaluable legacy. We can make a huge positive difference for the good in the lives of young people. In order to make that difference, one of the first things we must do is to establish an emotional climate for teaching. The key element is a caring relationship between the student and the teacher. You can be the world's greatest expert on a given subject, math, English, history, geography, or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be a great teacher. Kids are much more likely to listen to you and absorb what you have to teach if they feel like you care about them. Great teachers are intentional about creating a nurturing classroom environment where optimal learning can take place. And the best tool for creating such an environment is unconditional love. Unconditional love is unearned love. It means valuing a child no matter what, in spite of his mistakes and imperfections. Unconditional love can be life-changing for students fortunate enough to receive it from a caring adult at school. Years ago, a professor at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, gave a group of graduate students an assignment. They were to go to the slums, select 200 boys between the ages of 12 and 16, investigate their backgrounds and environment, and then predict the kids' future. After interviewing the boys, gathering as much data as they could, and comparing it to social statistics, the students predicted that 90% of the boys would spend some time in jail. 25 years later, another group of graduate students at Johns Hopkins was given the job of testing the prediction. They went back to the slum area. Some of the boys, who were now men, still lived there. A few had died. But the students got in touch with 180 out of the original 200 kids. They found that only 4 of the group had ever been sent to jail. Why was it that these men, who had been raised in a breeding ground of crime, had such a surprisingly good record? In the course of their interviewing these men, the researchers were constantly told, well, there was this teacher. The researchers pressed further and discovered that in 75% of the cases, it was the same teacher. The students located the teacher in a retirement home. They asked her how she had exerted such a remarkable influence over this group of former slum children. Could she give them any reasons why these men should have remembered her? She said, no, I really can't. Then, as she thought back over the years, she said meditatively, more to herself than to the researchers, I sure did love those boys. That teacher intuitively loved those young men. She loved them just as they came to her, loud, raunchy, disruptive, quiet, unkept, self-centered, cool, and shy. She loved them for who they were, and her love and her faith in them prompted them to rise to her expectations. It is the job of every adult who interacts with children, especially those of us who are parents and teachers. Because it is a form of love that has little to do with feelings or emotions, unconditional love in the classroom doesn't just happen. It involves making a conscious decision to love kids no matter what. It doesn't mean that we allow students to misbehave. What it means is that we learn to discipline their behavior while still respecting them and valuing them as persons. In order to create this type of nurturing classroom environment, it's important that we understand the components of unconditional love and care. The components of unconditional love and care. The first aspect of unconditional love and care is that it separates the person from the behavior and values kids for who they are rather than what they do. That sort of love can create miracles in the classroom or on the athletic field, in the band hall, in the cafeteria, and any place where we teachers have contact with students. Kids will work hard for a teacher or a coach that they feel cares about them. They will cooperate better, misbehave less, and be much less likely to drop out of school. A second element of unconditional love is that it is not permissive. Unconditional love requires that we call young people to a sense of responsibility. Kids who are allowed to run wild do not feel loved. They may say they like a permissive, rule-free environment, but inwardly they feel that the adults around them simply do not care. Caring teachers establish reasonable rules and guidelines for appropriate classroom behavior, and when kids break the rules, they apply age and school-appropriate consequences that allow a child to learn from her mistakes and to take greater responsibility for her behavior in the future. That's one of the tasks of unconditional love and care. It requires a paradigm shift from punishment, which means making students suffer in order to learn, to discipline, which means to guide or to teach. A third dynamic of unconditional love and care is that it requires planning and hard work. Unconditional love and care do not appear in a classroom by accident. In The Road Less Traveled, Scott Peck says, "Love is not effortless. To the contrary, love is effortful." Dr. Peck further contends that since love is work, the essence of non-love is laziness. Effective teaching is a dynamic, constantly changing process. People who do it well find themselves changing and growing along with their students. Insisting on doing things like we have always done them may save teachers the effort of considering changes in their teaching behaviors, but it is lazy teaching. Rather than resenting the fact that good teaching calls for flexibility, creativity, and hard work, a more appropriate approach is for teachers to view this task as one of the most important, fascinating, and rewarding challenges that the human journey provides. As teachers commit themselves to the effort required in developing lesson plans and implementing new teaching strategies, they participate in giving unconditional love. This deepest form of love has little to do with emotions or feelings. It involves a conscious, intentional decision to concern ourselves with the well-being of their students, no matter what. And because it is intentional, unconditional love usually requires some personal sacrifice of time, patience, and emotional energy. It's what real love is all about. A fourth component of unconditional love is that it cannot be shared by a person who has not first received it. We cannot give away what we do not have. This truth explains why out of the 10 group affirmations, the first 5 are self-affirmations. We must first receive unconditional love before we can share it with others. The second 5 affirmations, the student's affirmations, are specific to the task of conveying unconditional love to our students. The life-changing character of affirmations lies in the fact that when positive values are verbalized aloud over and over again, they become embedded in our subconscious. And what resides in our subconscious eventually is lived out on a conscious basis. The affirmations, when intentionally practiced, can be an important vehicle for the receiving and subsequent giving of unconditional love. Howard Hendricks, in his book Teaching to Change Lives, states that maximum learning is always the result of maximum involvement. In order to elicit the maximum involvement of students in the classroom, teachers must establish an atmosphere in which students feel wanted and accepted. When that is accomplished, studies have shown that students learn more, like school better, like their teachers better, like each other better, and like themselves better. No other profession offers a better opportunity to make a real difference in this world than does teaching. To be really good at it, teachers must be intentional about creating a nurturing classroom environment. And the key ingredient of a nurturing classroom environment is unconditional love. Here's some things to think about in understanding the nature of unconditional love. Unconditional love in the classroom doesn't just happen. It requires teachers to make a conscious decision to love kids no matter what. Unconditional love separates the person from the behavior and values a student for who he is rather than for what he does. Unconditional love is not permissive. It calls students to a sense of responsibility. Unconditional love requires planning and hard work. Unconditional love cannot be shared by a person who has not first received it. Creating relationships between teachers and between teachers and students is what Arc for Teachers is all about.